Welcome to Let Me Life Hitched Up. I'm Red.
And I'm TJ.
And in this video, we're going to share with you the difficulties and challenges we face from visiting Voyagers National Park in Minnesota this past summer.
This park is located in northern Minnesota, straddling the Canadian border. Many people have never even heard of Voyagers because it's amongst the least visited national parks, with less than
300,000 people supposedly visit that park yearly, but it's hard to keep track of how many people because of the fact that there is no entry fee and there are so many different entry points to the park.
Yeah, there's so many ways in and out, so it's not like your traditional park where they know every person coming in and out.
So according to the park's website, there are only 10 trails on the mainland.
But to truly enjoy the park, you have to get out on the water. This park is kind of like a water-based park, and visit all of the different islands that are located within the park.
Yeah, and like I said before, there is no entrance fee. However, Voyagers National Park is very expensive. There's a high cost to truly experience this park. The number one challenge when visiting Voyagers is its accessibility.
It's mostly exclusively accessible by boat or some sort of watercraft, kayak or whatever, because it is basically a water-based park.
And I can't swim, and I'm really terrified of the water, so we weren't able to get a kayak or a canoe, which would really be an excellent way to visit this park.
Right.
However, there are some hiking trails on land, on the mainland, near Rainy Lake Visitor Center and near Ash Visitor Center, but unless you have a boat, you're going to have to rent one or find a guided
tour, whether it's through the National Park Service or otherwise. At the time that we visited the Voyagers National Park, the National Park Service was not running tours because of a massive amount of flooding that had just taken place. So they temporarily suspended their guided tours at that time.
But fortunately, there are a number of local outfitters that will take you out for tours. And the national parks gave us the list, and you can also find that on their website as well. And the reason they can go out is because their guidelines are completely different than those of the national park. But it was safe to go out and enjoy the park.
Right, it's just a matter of getting their services back up and running, and private companies can, obviously do as they see fit.
Unfortunately, because we did not have advanced reservations, we had to make numerous phone calls and try to line up a tour.
No, not we.
I had to make numerous phone calls and try to line up a tour that fit into our schedule and what we truly wanted. And unfortunately, we couldn't find that because where I really wanted to visit was Kettle Falls Historic Hotel. And that is one of the longest tours. That's 6.5 hours from where we were setting out. And we couldn't get that tour. And it would have been very expensive too.
Well, we had wanted to go to Kettle Falls as our primary tour. That's what we had on our bucket list. That would have cost us $85 per adult, $42.50 if you have an interagency pass or discount pass.
That would have been run through the national parks. Now, they
Right.
open up their reservation window on April 15 at 9 a.m. every year. You can get that online at recreation.gov, or we'll put a number down below or above of where you can call them to get a reservation.
There are 9 different tours listed on the website that you can choose from, with different departure areas and different schedules as they go through. The longest cruise being the Kettle Falls cruise.
And just so you know, the national park does offer a stargazing cruise. Summer nights are generally the best time to view the Milky Way. The park has many locations on land that are perfect for stargazing as well.
So it's got a great open horizon, specifically facing in the correct directions, that you can get some good views of the Milky Way.
Yeah, and also it's a good place to view the Northern Lights. We didn't get a chance to do that while we were there. It wasn't the optimal time, but that's another option when you go there. So like we said, price is a definite concern, but we were very fortunate to find a local experienced guide named Larry.
Larry had a really nice pontoon boat.
Yes, and he lives in the area year-round, and he really knows that place like the back of his hand.
Look at the rock. Nothing. Look at the moss. 6 inches, pine needles, and moss, just like a piece of carpet. That's all there is.
No attachment at all. Wow.
It's hard to comprehend. Now this is the peninsula shoreline. There's one of the campsites right there, Northland. Look at you kind of see how they're...
I believe he ran a hotel that used to be on Rainy Lake.
And now he does, in his retirement, he does guided boat tours, which was cool. We were able to hook up a tour with Larry. Unfortunately, not to the Kettle Falls that we wanted, but we still got a great tour. It cost us $1.50, $150, but it is an amazing boat ride with a massive amount of information. We finally got to see a really good portion of the park, which is best viewed by the water.
And I want to say the ride was a 3-hour ride. Now, on a side note, during this tour that we took with Larry and on some tours that the National Park offers, there's a stop at Ellsworth Rock Garden.
Yes.
Now, there was a good spot to walk and stretch out our legs.
Yep.
But...
And there's a facility there to use the restroom as needed. But I will say this, I'm sure in its day, it was absolutely gorgeous. It's kind of a little long in the tooth. Let's go with that. And the amazing part of it was actually built by one man who, no power tools, all manual work to create this beautiful rock garden because he liked to putter, and he made a beautiful rock garden, and they're bringing it back to its glory with all the flowers that once were there. But it is a little kind of abandoned looking at times.
Kind of depressing.
But in a beautiful setting, and I'm sure in its day, it was absolutely gorgeous.
Now, getting back to the cost, another popular way to experience this park is by renting a houseboat. And they can run from $400 a night for a small boat to over $1,300 a night for one that could sleep 10 to 12 guests. Do you have 10 to 12 friends you want to bring with us?
Not on a houseboat.
Not on a houseboat.
But you obviously would need to know how to manage that type of thing. It's not just like a big giant open lake. It's a whole series of islands, so you have to learn, navigation would be good. So probably a map, things like that. Personally, if you've never been there before, I think a guided tour is probably the way to go.
I agree. Now, if you're enjoying our video and you're finding it helpful, consider subscribing to our channel. Give us a thumbs up.
You can drop a comment down below if there's a national park that you think we need to see, or a recommendation of one that you've loved, because we're always going places and we're always looking for somewhere to go. Challenge number 3 is going to be the weather. Like pretty much everywhere else you go, you always have to take that in consideration. If you enjoy the cold weather, you're going to feel right at home here. We stayed in International Falls, Minnesota, and there were a few nights that we actually had to put the heat on in our camper, and we were there in July?
Mid-July.
Mid-July. It got down to the 30s.
Their slogan is the Icebox of the nation.
Yes,
and
it's right
on
on their big water tower, and it's cold there, so you're going to want to make sure that you bring appropriate clothing when you travel to these areas, because you're going to experience things like rain, cold, so layers and all that. It's going to make for a much more enjoyable trip. If you do prepare ahead for that.
Challenge number 4 is the layout of the park.
Well, this park has 3 visitor centers. We're great rangers there, some volunteers and some employees giving you great information. We did Rainy Lake.
We went to Rainy Lake Visitor Center, and that's located in International Falls.
And then we went to Kabetagama, just specifically so someone could teach us how to say that actual name. We went to that, and that is literally right off Highway 53 in Kabetagama, as you can imagine.
We never made it to the Ash River Visitor Center, and that's on the eastern end of Kabetagama Lake.
Yeah.
Would we return to Voyagers?
I would say fall trip, I'm sure, is absolutely amazing until it gets beyond, below zero. For me, not a big cold weather person, but the fall with the colors would be fantastic. And there is one other reason why, in the end, we are going to have to go back, and that would be...
Because you may be able to see the northern lights in the fall from there. So
yeah.
Until we get to Alaska, we may just have to go to Minnesota first.
That is true. And there's one other thing that we did not get to do to check off our bucket list.
I want to go to Kettle Falls Historic Hotel and maybe spend the night or just a day, depending on the tours that are available. But that's something that's on my list.
Yes.
And I wouldn't mind spending a night on a houseboat.
Especially if you could hook up with maybe someone who's a local or someone that's familiar with the lake, has some experience, so you don't get lost wandering around and end up like Gilligan's Island.
What was that unique animal we spotted on the trail? No, it wasn't beautiful deer that entertained us on this hike.
Not a moose, unfortunately.
Moose,
alligator,
no.
Nothing cool like that.
It was a beagle. But what was so unique about this beagle? She seemed to know exactly where she was going.
She was on the path, walking the path. We were actually filming some deer we had run across, and all of a sudden something comes running by and scared the bejesus out of us because didn't know what it was and weren't expecting.
And it was on the
anything.
boardwalk on the
Yeah.
Oberholzer trails, so it kind of surprises that noise.
Yep.
But
It was a beautiful little beagle, a little on the chubby side, and this dog had a plan.
I love beagles. She wouldn't even let me pet her. So, but we tried to help her, but she didn't need our help.
Yeah.
Aside from visiting the park, there's not a whole lot of stuff to do in the area, but we did enjoy the little town of Rainy Lake and
Yes.
International Falls.
Yes, I actually got a haircut in International Falls.
He sure did. And we
Much
had a really,
needed.
yeah, no kidding. And we had a really good meal at their distillery. Not to mention, some nice local
Spirits.
spirits.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. We also had an opportunity to get a little history from Larry for part of it, and then we were able to see off in town where a section of this whole park was created by, in essence, the taking of the land of people who lived there against their will. In some cases, the federal government just decided we're going to make this a park and take the land away from these folks. So we did get to run across a I don't know how big that statue was.
I don't know. It was
A
pretty
giant statue of one of the champions who fought the federal government for the longest time to try to stop them from taking the land. But in the end, the national park won out. It's beautiful now, but I'm sure if you were from the area at the time, this was a highly contested problem.
Right. And while we were in International Falls, we got to see one of the really cool roadside attractions, a 26-foot tall Smokey the Bear. That was really neat.
So, things that we would want to do when we get back to this is going to be stargazing tour.
Kettle Falls and camping within the park.
Yes, cut down on some of that drive-in, drive-out time. Getting a spot inside the park would be great. So, some tips for you if you're planning to do this. Schedule your whole trip around making sure the national park can give you the tour that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Schedule in advance. Highly recommend the stargazing tour. Kettle Falls.
And lots of warm clothing.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this video. Hope that we were able to provide you with a little bit of information to help you plan and enjoy your travels like we do.
And remember, when you're out there loving life,
Do it hitched up.